I got to come out and say, all jokes aside, Brittany Griner was an absolute beast tonight. But I'm not sure there was a bigger beast in the arena than the officiating in this game, which was absolutely brutal.
The universe of basketball is outraged by frightening new video from the game Fever Dream, which is frame after frame. It is hard to ignore analysis shows what many people suspected, but couldn't demonstrate a methodical officiating pattern that was directed at Caitlin Clark during WNBA execs' rush to keep the fallout. The proof is incriminating and unable to ignore.
Let's take a look at the final numbers. I got to tell you, number one, shame on the WNBA, because the WNBA and everything that's happened in the last 3 days absolutely wore down this Indiana Fever crowd.
Could this officiating controversy at last compel the WNBA will address its perceived bias against the biggest star in the league, or will they keep acting as though nothing's happening? Please share your thoughts below. The Indiana Fever recently suffered the Atlanta Dream 91-90's heartbreak difficult defeat without a certain, but that's not the here. The true narrative is what occurred in that game, or more precisely what was permitted to occur to Caitlin Clark during that whole contesting. Someone takes far too long on their hands and express gratitude for they have put up an extensive video breakdown displaying each and every missing phantom foul call and obvious no-call Clark's involvement in the Fever Dream matchup. And I can assure you that this isn't "my squad was robbed" by your standards compilation. This is a systematic clinical proof of something much more concerning.
We got to just come out and say it. The original triplets showed up tonight. Aaliyah Boston 24, Kelsey Mitchell 24, Caitlin Clark had a monster game. 27 points, 11 assists, 5 rebounds. Those 5 rebounds she had in the first half of the game.
First, let's set the scenario. Caitlin Clark possessed what is often rated as a monster game with 27 points and 11 rebounds and 5 assists. She pulled down rebounds during the first half. By alone, she tied the record with this performance. For the most 20 years, Courtney Vanderloot games with 10 points and 10 assists in WNBA history. Clark has participated in 42 games. Vanderloot has more than 400, which isn't merely shattering records that are destroying them.
Fever going without Sophie Cunningham here for their second straight game. They are
two bigs. I think they'll make some adjustmts, but they are doing a good job playing with 2 bigs so far.
And there's Clark turning the
almost didn't hit across midcourt.
Alicia Gray has it denied. Austin sends it back. Clark with numbers. Bounce pass Howard.
Oh, and additionally, Clark rose to the 4th fastest player to reach 800 in WNBA history lifetime points in this match. Yet even so, with everything against her, she's continuing to create history each time she enters the court. Yet that's just why is this recent footage so unsettling? What would her numbers look like if she was fairly officiated?
As much as you don't want to have to lose a game like this, is going through some of those end of game situations early help?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yes, this stinks. We want to win this game. But, I think this is great for our team. A little adversity. How are we going to respond? How are we going to come in here tomorrow morning and watch the film and learn and get on the court and get better? And like I said, that's why this league is so great. You have a couple of days and then you get right back to it. You find a way to respond. We have a chance to go there and play them, actually, so it's even better. I guess we can, get a little redemption if we go down there and play well. So
even bystanders spotted something was gravely flawed in the officiating the boyfriend of Connor McCaffrey Clark. It's good to see the W referees in mid-season. He completely cremated. Good for him and them. Jason Whitlock participating in all this officiating crew's game. The sentiment was universally awful throughout social media when you have hardcore basketball enthusiasts and casual supporters with expert analysts all stating the same thing. Perhaps it has a certain quality, yet this new compilation transcends viewpoints and into the domain of indisputable proof. Let's down what the video demonstrates.
Boston continues to show her frustration. Really started
Initially, at least 7 distinct examples are present where Clark's arm was struck while without a whistle. Shooting is not borderline. Makes clear touch that would be demanded that anyone else in the league. We're discussing defenders. Striking, her, swiping her elbow and shooting throughout her arms, as well as one act where in essence she is tackled from behind. While trying to make a layup in one especially heinous sequence, Clark falls to the ground after being struck by attempting a three-point shot with the defender obviously touching her landing. One foul under space is a textbook flagrant. Current regulations intended to safeguard. Not only did the shooters lack a flagrant called, and not even a common foul was committed. As Clark gathered herself up, the play went on. Lifted from the ground, the defensive end comes next. Compilation displays. 4 distinct times that Clark was requested to TikTok commits fouls while playing upright. In one case, she is standing in defense. Her arms were vertical and she was still. All communication is started by the dream player, and in some way, Clark is whistled. The vertical defender in basketball 101 has established position, but in some way the whistle against her, which is why this film is especially disturbing since it demonstrates the same behaviors being evaluated entirely different based on there is a side-by-side for those involved. Analogy of Clark battling through a screen as opposed to a dream player performing the Clark receives a call for the exact same thing. The dream player doesn't share the same activity with the same level of touch, entirely most disparate officiating. Standards. The concerning thing about all of this is that it doesn't appear arbitrary or awful. Both would suffer and benefit from officiating, teams equally, so it doesn't appear arbitrary. It appears focused, methodical, and the WNBA ought to be there. Fearing that this compilation isn't working, only going around among die-hard basketball aficionados, it's becoming popular. Even Bubba, the 2-time Masters champion Watson, who was present at the game, appeared confused by the scene he was seeing when you have famous people from other sports, observing the disparity in the officiating. You're dealing with a major issue. Let's be clear about one thing: hands. Basketball includes physical defense. No one is requesting Clark to receive preferential treatment, therapy, or for the defenders to be unable to appropriately protect her. What people are requesting that the same rules be followed consistently applied uniformly to each individual. On the court, that is not currently taking place, and this new video demonstrates that beyond any doubt. Reasonable doubt is now the question. Becomes the reason why WNBA officials would appear to target the largest league star. It isn't logically consistent with, from a business standpoint, Clark is contributing unheard of focus on the league TV. Ratings are high and arenas are selling out. Rising sharply, she's the golden goose, so reasons for cooking it, with hypotheses ranging from the harmless to those who plot. Some imply that it's just traditional basketball. The young star's mindset earns her stripes, but prior to becoming a veteran, calls that could have been justified in its Clark's first season, but she's doing well. Currently breaking into her sophomore year, records of the payment of dues left and right. Others indicate that the time should be over. More concerning chance that there's real order from within the WNBA environment. To oversee Clark's impact through sound officiating absurd, until you examine some of the league's declarations and actions regarding over the previous 12 months, there appears to be an uneasy association with Clark's popularity. Nearly as much as some within the power structure is not amenable to one player growing significantly larger than the most devastating evidence for everyone else. This theory is supported, by the broadcast partner of the WNBA. An analyst during a recent studio part unintentionally brought up talking points. They were given instructions on how to talk about. They were heard saying this by Clark, the hot mic. Recall what they informed us regarding keeping the Clark coverage in line with earlier being disconnected? That isn't conjecture, that took place on television. There are actually talking points regarding how can we talk about Caitlin Clark. And now, this fresh video indicates that the management may go beyond stories in the media and into the gameplay itself, which is where this turns into a significant integrity issue. WNBA's approach to the league's problem. The quiet has been deafening thus far. Declarations expressing concern regarding providing no justifications for the obvious differences. Not even the typically. We're evaluating the game that leagues usually provide when there are contentious calls, yet there is just stillness. This is typically used in crisis management, the worst strategy in the interim. The Indiana Fever supporters appeared to be nearly quiet throughout this game, which is uncommon considering they're typically electrified the overall mood of Clark's games, the WNBA, and everything. The Observer wrote, that took place within the last 3 days, wore down this Indiana Fever completely. Audience right from the start of this game. You could see that the audience was simply exhausted. They were worn out. Naturally, alluding to the baseless examination of the alleged racism remarks made during the last Fever game. and probe against the Chicago sky that was started using only unconfirmed video-free Twitter postings or audio proof to back up the assertions. A study that even the Heavens coach, who was formerly employed by Indiana, was superfluous because he had heard nothing improper from the audience. That inquiry is still being conducted by the WNBA's announcement that they lack a completion schedule. In the meanwhile, they're permitting the cloud of mistrust to loom large over Indiana's supporters' bases that might have an impact on the environment during home games, and even scheduling the All-Star game, for it feels like Indianapolis is in danger. Linked component of a more extensive pattern of behaviors that appear to be intended to reduce, manage, or keep Caitlin Clark under control effect instead than accepting it, and that's when the WNBA's approach turns into totally unintelligible. From a commercial perspective, consider this: millions more are coming thanks to Clark. Viewers of basketball for women, she's luring famous people from other sports similar to Bubba Watson. She's receiving widespread media coverage of the WNBA, has frantically looked for decades, and I'm referring to any logical environment where the league would be making every effort to support and safeguard this asset in its place. They're permitting her to be assaulted, court with inadequate officiating protection. They're looking into her fan base of the team based on unverified rumors on Twitter suggest they're attempting to balance her coverage in spite of historic accomplishments. It's at a level, organizational malpractice, that's nearly impossible to understand. Why is this so annoying? Is the impact it has on basketball itself. The fever dream game should be played have served as a display of fascinating women's basketball, as opposed to several observers observed that it became cruel to observe because of the incessant erratic whistles. According to one analyst, it's a game that was slowed down for the whole of the game. This game's dreadful foul calls made it sometimes visually challenging to see. This is just the opposite of what basketball fans desire to observe, that they pay attention to the athletics. The ability that the competition does not observe. Referees are the main attraction with their whistles, and when they appear to be used unfairly, it compromises the irony here is that the entire product. Clark doesn't ever gripe about the officiating. She is quite calm. She doesn't, for a player in her position. Don't act out when you complain to the referees. Doesn't justify anything in the media. She only plays basketball at conferences. A historically prestigious level. Allowing her to the game speaks for itself. Professionalism despite this. The problem is made more worse by treatment. Staring at her colleagues, who can also see it, Aaliyah Boston, who scored 24 points during the match, has become more outspoken regarding the Clark's physical care. Kelsey, without the proper whistles. Mitchell, who scored 24 as well, has made similar findings. These aren't simply teammates defending a celebrity, they're top athletes themselves who acknowledge the inconsistent nature of the game officiated. What's especially, it is disheartening how this impacts the experience. Watching the WNBA for new fans has a fantastic chance at this moment to transform millions of infrequent watchers into ardent supporters when those viewers pay attention and observe clear discrepancies in officiating. It gives out a bad impression that's difficult to beat because the game is rigged. Not what any sports league wants to take away. The package will also be available to new fans. Draws attention to yet another concerning trend: how physical protection against Clark appears to take heart from the absence of whistles. Defenders are aware that they can avoid more bumping, more grasping, more touch. When protecting her, this has an impact on her performance, but it can also place her. The last thing the WNBA wants is harm danger. Their biggest celebrity is what they should want. Sidelined since authorities permitted excessive contact, so what occurs next? The compilation is quickly becoming popular. Throughout mainstream sports on social media, outlets are beginning to increase the tale. The proof is also too obvious. Thorough to be written off as prejudiced, WNBA fan complaints will eventually must deal with it. Their choices are restricted. They were able to recognize the inconsistent behavior and a pledge to improve the simplest method. However, one that would necessitate acknowledging there is a problem, but they might overlook it, and I hope it surpasses their present approach, but one that grows less feasible as further data becomes available. Or they could go one step farther and recommend the compilation is selective or deceptive. Dangerous strategy considering how obvious the footage is. Any route they decide to choose, some damage has already been done. The story is developing, and it's not an opening statement for the WNBA league feels uneasy about Caitlin Clark's fame and is used officiating to restrict her influence. Her admirers aren't naive, can observe what takes place when Clark gets blasted. After driving to the basket, without a whistle, a Dream player receives hardly made contact with the opposite end and goes to the line for the free throw. The even casual observers can see the contrast. Observers, this compilation simply summarizes everything precious time spent together in an indisputable package that irritates me the most. This circumstance is very needless. There isn't any real opposition between the accomplishments of Clark and other WNBA players, or the league overall. All boats are lifted by increasing tides when more. The reason why people watch Fever games is they also find players like A.A. Clark, Sabrina Ionescu, Wilson, Brianna Stewart, along with dozens of others. Angel Reese, amazing sportsman, and her fame draws everyone's attention to the measurements help this audience is growing across all. Not only Fever games are broadcast by the WNBA. Engagement on social media has grown. Merchandise sales for all teams have increased. Clark's popularity across the league isn't depriving other players of anything. It's enhancing the overall environment for a league with battled for decades to accomplish financial and widespread relevance. However, this strategy defies understanding. It's similar to receiving getting a lotto ticket and whining on the WNBA's tax implications. At a turning point, people can accept this moment to address the issues raised by the officiating, finish their irrational inquiry, and concentrate on the amazing basketball being performed, or they could go on down. This present course is turning off new admirers. After damaging their own merchandise at the exact time they ought to be acknowledging its accomplishment as a single analyst. Put simply, the WNBA's officiating is, will you keep Clark and his Fevers at bay? They will make games unattractive. They'll employ shit that's boring and physical. Officiating to remove this teams is beautiful, entertaining to watch. Hopefully that forecast doesn't materialize, because if it succeeds, the WNBA will have wasted the most promising area for development in its past. Which would be the actual tragic evidence in all of this, is now indisputable. Frame-by-frame video reveals the way in which authorities are treating Clark distinct from the rest of the people. On the will the WNBA do action to address this expanding scandal, or keep acting as though it don't exist? Press the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe now. Fair whistles. If you want officiating that is consistent,